Hi folks, I do long solo canoe trips in the summer and I make bannock. So I thought that while I'm here stuck in the city, I might show you how I do it. I'm going to use the exact same equipment I use in the bush, and I'll explain what this is in a minute, but this time I'm going to bake it on the Firebox stove, which I've never done before, so I'll give it a try. Okay, so for equipment here, I take this wash basin with me. It's multi-purpose. I can fit this inside the opening of my 60-liter food barrel. For those who aren't familiar with canoe tripping, most of us in the north use big plastic food barrels now for our food packs, which are deterrents against bear attacks on our packs. And I'll explain about the other bits of hardware later. Let's get mixing here. This is 4 cups of pre-made Bannock mix that I make at home. The shortening is already cut in, and the first thing I do is I'm going to put about 3 cups or 3/4 of this in the basin. And the critical thing is to hold back 1/4 of it, because we're going to mix that in and make it drier later. So I'm going to add the water, and you got to be careful not to add too much water. If you add too much water, you will not get a nice dry bannock, which is the way I prefer it. I don't know how much water I use, I just do it by eye and by feel. Okay, it's almost getting there. It's starting to get sticky in big clumps. Now you really have to withstand the temptation to add too much water. I almost was going to add a pile of water there, but you can see that, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but the dough is really starting to stick to itself, and the consistency I like to get is where when you wipe the mixing spoon on it, the spoon is just about clean. So actually that's about right. And now put this spoon aside, and now I'm going to add the remaining 1/4 of the mix. This is where the hands get into the dough here to knead it. Okay. Now with kneaded bannock, you will get formation of long gluten fibers, which will make the bread more fluffy and elastic, more like leavened bread. This is unleavened bread because it's using baking powder instead of yeast. And this is what takes a while. I'll certainly edit the footage here to speed it up for you. And the idea with the final consistency is that your hand should be able to be cleaned by the dough pretty well. So it's not wet and sticky on your hands. Then you'll know you have the right consistency for a nice dry baked bannock that's more bread-like as opposed to cakey. Now there's nothing wrong with a cakey texture consistency. If you just mix dough up and don't knead it like this, it'll be more crumbly and cakey as opposed to more elastic and bready. So it's just a personal taste. This is more labor. So I don't know how the chemistry of bread works, but apparently by folding it over and kneading it like this, there's a chemical process where big long fibers of protein called gluten form and make elastic. The fibers are kind of elastic, and that's what gives bread its texture. So if I do this perfectly, which I don't always do because I'm measuring by eye and by feel, I should be able to pick up all the flour or the mix cleanly off the bowl, which I'm just about there, and nothing really on my hands. So I'll knead this a few more times. Okay, it's done, and now there's shortening cut into this and pre-mixed into it. I use lard for shortening, so this has a greasy feel to it. I'll put that aside. And this is an 8-inch fry pan. I'll put this in there, and now I could have kneaded it longer, but just for demonstration purposes I was a little lazy on that. But when you press it, it wants to spring back, so that's a good sign. Seal up all the edges so it doesn't split when it rises. And keep it back a bit from the edge because it'll expand out to the edge, and you want to be able to get your spatula underneath it so you can flip it once or twice. There, so that's it. It's ready to be put on your source of heat, and this time, like I said, I'm going to use the Firebox stove and see how it works. And I make an oven using this 9-inch steel pie plate. This is really light. It's silvery and reflective. These are hard to find because most of the ones you find now are heavier in enamel. But if you can find one of these light steel ones, grab it, and it'll just sit on top like that and form a great little oven. Okay, gonna break here and then get the fire set up. Be back in a minute. Okay, I have the Firebox stove stuffed with wood chips from my wood pile and a little bit of birch bark, and I'm gonna start it with one of my favorite starters, which are thistle heads. And I should mention that I have the ash pan here. I have to pull it out from the back here. I have the ash pan in the reverse position. The regular position is down here, which provides a huge amount of airflow up through the big holes in the bottom, and you get roaring inferno and incredibly fast and efficient burn. But I actually want to slow the burn down because I'm going to be baking and I need low heat, low even heat. So I'm going to turn this upside down, slide it in here, and that is going to cut off the airflow from the bottom. But this stove has plenty of air holes all around it. That is going to give me a slower, less efficient burn, but that's actually what I want. So we'll get those thistle heads going. So I'm going to let this first load burn down to coals, then I will put the Bannock on top, and then I'll feed as required just to keep a little flame going. I love doing that, by the way. I love starting with thistle heads. So I'll put the fire stick supports on as well. And I'll just let this burn for a while and be back in a minute. Okay, that's about burnt down enough, and I'm gonna put the bannock on and then tend the fire from there. So here we have our bannock with my oven lid on there. Now I have the flap, the ventilation flap open, and you know what, I think just to slow this down I'm gonna close that. It's gonna be a bit more smoky, but that's okay. I want a nice controlled slow burn, and that did work, because I can see from the flame the draw has slowed down. That's just what I want. Big fat pieces like this are good if you have it, because they won't burn as fast as a small piece. Okay, I think it's getting close to flipping. You can actually smell a slight burning smell, but that's okay. That's what we look like there. Oh, not bad. Just very, very slightly burnt. That's nothing there. That's actually really good. I always have leather gloves on me in the bush, always. Now that flame is a little bit too much, so I'm going to take that off just for a couple minutes, maybe a minute. Let that flame die down. The wind came up and really blew that. Even though I had the back flap flipped up, there's enough air holes in there that the wind really got it going. So it's a real art to learning how to use these stick stoves. It depends on the quality of your fuel, the moisture content of your fuel. Yeah, so it's just by learning and doing that you can figure out how to bake with these things. So far so good. I think that's died down a bit. Put my bannock back on. So far only one flip. The perfect way to do it, of course, is just with one flip, but sometimes 2 flips per side depending on how it's going. We'll just check that. You can take a peek sometimes if you're worried about it. Just underneath. Ooh, we're actually pretty good. Look at this. Look at that. That is perfect. I think we're almost done here. I'm just going to give that about 1 more minute. I can tell just by experience that it's probably needs a bit more drying on the inside. Okay, I think we're done. Like I said, slightly burnt, just a tad on the top. Over up, look at that golden brown. That's got a good sound to it. It's got that thud 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 solid sound. Okay, I'll reset up the camera here, and we'll slice it in 2, and I'll show you what it looks like. But I'm going to let it set for about 5 or 10 minutes to cool. That will help the bread just get a little more solid. So back in a minute. I think total I was baking for about 20 minutes. Yeah, about 20 minutes. I forgot to time it as usual. Here's our beautiful bannock. Look at that. Now this is a non-stick pan, so I'm going to use this plastic knife. Look at that. It's a little moist in there, but it will dry out just as it cools off. It'll actually dry out a bit. So just a slight little, very slight little burn there, but otherwise perfect. Hope you enjoyed that, and get out and try some bannock baking for yourself. I forgot to show you its consistency, what it looks like inside. Now it's still warm, so it's a bit soft, but you can see that it's pretty solid. It's not crumbly and cakey so much. I could have kneaded it more, so it's partially crumbly. I'm gonna eat that. But when you pull it apart, the camera won't pick it up, but you should be able to see elastic fibers stretching before they break, and that's the sign of a well-kneaded bread. I think I'm going to get out some of my neighbor's homemade grape jam jelly and eat some more of this. See you out there.